All right, today we're diving into a pretty wild story, one full of international intrigue and a speculative, high-stakes military operation. Now, let's be super clear from the jump. What we're about to break down is a fictional narrative from a piece of media. This isn't a news report. Think of it as a fascinating what-if scenario. So, let's get right into it. I mean, just think about that question for a second. It's pretty shocking, right? Sounds like it's been ripped straight from a Hollywood movie script. But this is the crazy scenario we're exploring today. How could a global power even attempt to pull off something like this? Extracting the leader of another country from their own capital. So where does this whole story come from? Well, the entire scenario we're unpacking was laid out in incredible detail by a YouTube channel called Mighty Monk. They created this entire fictional plan. So our job here isn't to report news, but to deconstruct the story they told and see what it says.
The source gives this fictional mission a pretty dramatic name, Operation Absolute Resolve. And as the story goes, it kicks off exactly how you'd imagine an operation like this would, with a sudden, overwhelming blitz in the middle of the night. According to this story, the attack is a perfectly timed 4-step blitz. It all starts at 2 a.m. First, a massive cyber attack hits, and the entire power grid in Caracas goes dark. At that very same moment, electronic warfare planes light up Venezuela's air defense radars, blinding them completely. With the country deaf and blind, over 150 U.S. aircraft just flood Venezuelan airspace, and that paves the way for the final step, Delta Force soldiers landing directly on the roof of the presidential compound.
So while all that chaos is happening in the air, the ground assault is portrayed as just ruthlessly efficient. Before Maduro's security detail can even figure out what's going on, the commandos are in. They reportedly find Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores, making a run for a safe room, but it's just too late. Within minutes, they're captured, and the main objective of the mission is already complete.
And here's where the source's storytelling gets really interesting. It says that miles and miles away, a fictional President Trump is watching this whole thing live from the body cams of the soldiers. But his reaction isn't one of tension or gravity. No, the source describes him as feeling like he was watching a TV show, just completely detached, like it's some kind of primetime action movie. Okay, so the raid is a success. The how has been laid out in thrilling detail, but that's where the bigger questions start. Why? What on earth could lead to an action this extreme? To get to that answer, the story hits rewind and takes us way back. And the answer, at least according to this narrative, really boils down to one word: oil. For more than 100 years, you just can't separate the story of Venezuela from the story of the black gold under its soil. You can see the whole arc right here. After getting independence, Venezuela's destiny is completely rewritten in 1914 when they start pulling up oil commercially. The money just pours in, and by the 1950s, believe it or not, it's the 4th largest economy on the planet. This leads to this huge moment in 1976 when the government decides to nationalize the whole industry, taking complete control. And this decision turned Venezuela into what economists call a rentier state. It's a fancy term for a simple and very dangerous idea. It means pretty much all of your country's money, in this case 95% of export earnings, comes from selling one single thing to other countries. It's great when oil prices are high, but it also means you're incredibly vulnerable. If the price of oil ever tanks, your entire country goes down with it. So you've got this incredibly fragile economy, just waiting for a shock. And that sets the stage perfectly for the political crisis. The story now zooms in on the two leaders who really defined modern Venezuela, Hugo Chavez and his successor, Nicolás Maduro. And this is where you can really see the contrast. The source argues that during the Chavez era, global oil prices were sky high. That money let him fund his Bolivarian revolution and his very aggressive anti-American policies. But then, Maduro takes power, and the oil market completely collapses. He tries to keep up the same anti-US policies, but now there's no money to pay for anything. And the result, according to this telling, US sanctions, total economic collapse, and a devastating humanitarian crisis. And if you want a snapshot of just how bad that collapse was, just look at this number. In 2018, Venezuela's hyperinflation rate hit 1,700,000%. I mean, that's a number that's almost impossible to wrap your head around. It means money was literally more worthless than paper. The entire economy just evaporated. So it's against this backdrop of political fire and economic ruin that the story brings us back to the main plot, the meticulous, secret planning that went into Operation Absolute Resolve. The way the story is told, this part is pure espionage thriller. You've got CIA drones and agents on the ground mapping out every detail of Maduro's life. Then they get the big break they need. They recruit an insider, someone deep in his inner circle. And while all that's going on, a team of commandos is training on an exact, full-scale replica of the compound. The whole thing leads up to a final, dramatic phone call, a direct ultimatum to Maduro.
And Maduro's supposed response? Pure defiance. According to the source video, he just says, "Come get me, I'll wait here." And with that single challenge, the story says, the final decision was made. The operation was a go. So the raid happens, and it's a success. But the story makes it clear that capturing one man doesn't end the conflict. In fact, it's just the beginning of a brand new chaotic reality for Venezuela and for the rest of the world.
The international reaction is described as swift, and it is furious. Russia immediately calls it armed aggression. China condemns the arrogance of power. Countries all across Latin America are gripped with fear about who could be next. Even close allies like the UK have to issue a condemnation. In this telling, the US action leaves it totally isolated on the world stage.
And here is the major twist in the aftermath. Inside Venezuela, things don't go to plan at all. Instead of the US-backed opposition leader taking charge, a power vacuum opens up, and it's filled by Maduro's own vice president, Delcy Rodriguez. The very people the operation was supposedly designed to help are completely shut out.
And this chaotic outcome is what leads the source video to its final, big-picture argument. It makes the case that this fictional operation isn't some random, one-off idea. Instead, it argues that it fits neatly into a long and often controversial pattern in American foreign policy. To back up this claim, the narrative points to real-world history. It connects this fictional raid to the removal of leaders like Saddam Hussein in Iraq and Muammar Gaddafi in Libya. It mentions the invasion of Panama to get Manuel Noriega, and it even points to longer conflicts like Vietnam and Afghanistan as all part of this same pattern. So, it all builds to this central thesis. The conclusion presented in the source video is that, historically, US foreign policy is really driven by a cold, hard calculation of national interest. Things like securing resources or maintaining influence. And in this view, ideas like spreading democracy are often the public justification, not the actual primary goal. And that is the really powerful question that this whole fictional narrative leaves us with. It's a timeless dilemma, isn't it? Where exactly is the line between a nation pursuing its own interests and intervening in the affairs of another sovereign country? It's a complex question, and there are definitely no easy answers.